Hello. So this is just a 1 minute warning before we start.
Good life.
You want to try?
Yeah, it's over there. I don't know if you made it. No, that's not part of it. I'm serious now. Are we starting soon? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 1 minute warning. Does it remind you?
We've chatted.
I would expect it. Hello. So we're gonna get started here.
Let's do it.
Yes. Sorry, you were trying to get our attention. Weren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I will give you the full attention right after.
Hey everyone, we're starting the meetup now, so you can all pay attention to our lovely VC.
Which ones are the lovely ones?
You should shout.
I see one over here.
We have two of them.
What about this guy over here? You talking
He's
about him?
extra lovely.
He is so, yes, he is.
And just by the way,
It's true.
we're live on YouTube, so everybody knows.
Hello. So welcome to the Toronto meetup, August edition. Welcome to Slalom Build. This is our first time hosting, so I hope you got some food, talked a bit. We're gonna have later after presentation some more time to talk. Some of you know me, some of you do not. I am a senior engineer here at Slalom Build. I'm part of the digital experience team, and I do Sitecore day in and day out. So there we go. Yeah, so this is in part with Slalom Tech Talks. It's another meetup we do. The lovely ops team helped put this together. And I'm gonna let Catherine just say a few things about Slalom.
Oh, I don't need the mic. I'm gonna yell. You can all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've talked to most of you, I think, at the beginning, and you may have heard this before. But if you're not familiar, Slalom, we're a modern consulting company focused in strategy, technology, and business transformation. So we sit on the tech side, and we're called Slalom Build, and we're focused on custom product engineering for our clients. As Alan mentioned, he sits on the digital experience management team, which is really focused on marketing technology, and we do work in the digital analytics, marketing automation, and platform space. If you want to know more, feel free to find me after. I'm always happy to chat.
Thanks, Catherine. So yeah, today, so we're gonna have, this is the agenda for today. So Juan Hughes is gonna give us a deep dive on the data exchange framework. And then that's gonna be followed by Ken is gonna give the Agile Content Marketing presentation. And then, like I said, there will be some time to socialize afterwards. So yeah, our presenters. So Ken, I know Ken, I've known him for a few years. I used to work with Ken. He is the Director of Digital Transformation at TechHills. He's also an author. He does corporate training, so feel free to ping Ken. And Juan Hughes, I currently work with Juan. He came from Denver today. So give Juan a hand for that, because that's awesome. Both of them are Sitecore MVPs. I forgot to mention that, but Ken. And he also organizes the Denver meetup. So if you're ever out in Denver, feel free to ping him. Yeah. So like that. That's all I have. Right. So I'm gonna pass it to Juan to data exchange framework.
All right.
Juan, do you need the mic?
Probably will not.
Probably will.
You can leave it up there. People can't hear me in the back. Thank you.
Yeah, really cool. These guys are.
Yeah. Sorry. People are beautiful. You know that? You're lovely.
You're sexy too.
Well, thank you. We never paid you enough, you know.
It's getting a little awkward back here.
It's a Canadian.
Starting to understand. Everyone good? All right. Does anyone know what the data exchange framework is? A couple people? All right, good. Well, hopefully by the end of this, you'll know a little bit about it. Like Alan said, I've been working on the platform for years. I tend to take like a small part of the framework that no one really talks about, and try to kind of dive into it. So the exchange framework is one of those, I don't know, modules that continues to grow, but no one really talks about it unless you use it, right? So we'll do kind of an overview, and then I'll walk through history. And it seems like we got a bunch of devs in the room, so I'm going to open up kind of Visual Studio and talk through how to extend it and how to actually use it. All right. For the most part, it is a lot of configuration within Sitecore, but you can also do some really cool things. Most projects, there's some form of integration, right? There's a whole industry on integration tools, rationalizing, interpreting, restructuring data. Data exchange framework does not fall into this category. Right? It is not built for this type of scale. Right? It is Sitecore likes building tools so it's not dependent on other applications. So this one is heavily focused just on extract, transform, and load. Right? Take something from one system, transform it, put it in a new system. It's built for this particular framework. It's targeted for Sitecore. It can be used to integrate data with other systems, but for the most part, you're going to pull data from Salesforce, CRM, a database, and get it into Sitecore, and this is a consistent way to do it. For folks that have been using the platform for a year, come up with different models to pull in data and have our own frameworks. This was Sitecore's way of doing something consistent. Right? In the past, they had anyone know what the media framework was back in the day? All right, so that was their way to integrate with, what was it? Uyala for video provider and Brightcove. not that many people use it, right? And so this is their attempt to build something consistent. It started with the integration of CRM, and then it's kind of grown over the past couple of years. The main goals of why they did it, just to provide a consistent model, right? Instead of having to build it custom every time, this is a way that you can extend it and use providers, and then just focus a lot on the configuration. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit. Flexibility, so it's not going to get rid of anything that you already built, right? It's not going to conflict with that. Minimal dependency on Sitecore. So there's a whole lot of, all the configuration is within Sitecore, but you can actually run it on a different server, right? So if you want it to scale and it's a process that runs a long time, you don't have to keep it on your CM or your CD environment, so it's not going to impact Sitecore. It's going to call it and get the information out of it, and then it can be run in a different app. The last one was one of their goals, minimal Sitecore expertise needed to develop a provider. I don't know if they accomplished that. But it is, you know, the skills that you learn with Sitecore will apply to this. I mean, the goal is to kind of decouple it from the core assemblies within Sitecore, but understanding pipelines, all the stuff that you currently work on and understand, you're going to leverage that. Any questions? All right, I talk fast, so you guys don't hesitate to jump in and ask questions. So when did this come out? So it's been out a few years. So it's been 3 years now when they launched it. And when it came out initially, it was just the data exchange framework, version 1, and it had dynamics. So there used to be, if you go to the documentation, you'll look at the different connectors. There used to be a SharePoint connector, Dynamics connector, and kind of 2016, they kind of switched away from that and started using this framework. So if you're using an earlier version of Sitecore, you won't use a data exchange framework, right? It starts with Sitecore 8.1, update 1, and then it kind of builds from there. So the first few versions, they just kind of the same thing. It was a new product, so each release, you know, they were just trying to add features, get a little bit better. First few releases were very raw and very dependent on dev skills. Kind of same thing, another release towards the end of the year. And then they realized people were going to start building on it, so they released an SDK. So if you installed it, kind of the 1.2, 1.3, there were a lot of steps that you had to go through just to start building a provider. So they released an SDK that cut down on the steps drastically. And 1.4.1 is the first time they had the Salesforce integration, right? So that's when they released the connector for Salesforce. In this version, you can't have CRM, Dynamics, and Salesforce installed together, but most people don't have it. 2.0 came out, and this is where it started to expand and become a bigger part of the actual platform. So we've got, they always had a provider model where Sitecore provider, that's how you're integrating and adding data within Sitecore. And so with, if we go back to 1.4, you'll see on the right side for the providers, you just had Sitecore and then the providers for CRM. It's okay. Okay.
Turn on the light. It's very dark.
Okay.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, you want the third one.
Oh, now you're backlit.
I know.
Smile, brother, I can't see it.
I know.
I can say that.
You can, I got it.
There you go. That's better.
Oh, it's so much light. All right.
I know you want it.
There you go. So with 2.0, so the release of 9, they were obviously, the platform got a little bit bigger. So they also launched a provider for SQL Server and XConnect. So this is a way to integrate into the Experience database using XConnect in that framework. 2.0.1, so just each version, just a little bit of enhancements. Nothing major released on this one, just performance improvements. So again, with your initial release, product tends to be a little bit solid after kind of update 1. When 9.1 was released, they actually came out with a tenant service to, again, make sure that it can scale, right? It's starting to integrate a lot more. There are other providers or forms providers, but now you have a tenant service, again, being able to run it, take the load off of your Sitecore environment and run it with on a separate app service. So that was the 5-minute history of data exchange framework. I still have no clue what it does. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry, this probably was for the previous section, but I just thought of it. Like, given, the overhead that you need to do something like data exchange framework, why would I make that choice instead of like, your typical, data provider layer, that's just grabbing something from the SQL database? Why would I make that choice, exchange framework, instead of that sort of a choice when I'm developing?
Yeah, it's a good question. The provider, the provider model, I guess it's a bit more fragile, right? And they're moving more towards this model here, especially, and you're just syncing data back and forth, right? If you're looking at it, trying to make it live, that's one way to kind of go the old school or the original way. This is you're moving data back and forth, right? So from Salesforce standpoint, you're coming, you got your contacts and you're putting it into XDB so that you can leverage it that way. Question.
So if I can ask a very similar question, how does data exchange framework differentiate itself from other ETL tools like Alteryx or MuleSoft or any of these other ETL?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go back to kind of this slide in terms of the scale. Yeah, in terms of the scale, it's not built to compete
It's not built to compete.
in this space, right? It's very Sitecore specific, right? They tend to want to limit the dependencies on other applications, right? So if you install Sitecore, then you go, well, I got Salesforce, I want to integrate. Well, you can't integrate. You got to go buy another product to go integrate. So this is their answer to focus on just their product, understanding the layers within Sitecore so that you can integrate. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for larger scale projects, those applications you'll still.
Another question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this framework sends the data back and forth between the Sitecore and other platforms. How is the performance? I'm just worried about the performance.
Depends on the scale, right? If it's your, from a Salesforce standpoint, you tend to batch it, so you can batch the process, and that's why they came out with a tenant service to move it off of your Sitecore box, because while it's running, you do see spikes on your Sitecore box. Now taking it off, it's
but fetching the data is no problem.
Retrieving the data, no, it's processing it and distributing it is typically the overhead.
So I'm going to ask a question, maybe you're going to cover it after, so just feel free to not answer it now. The difference between provider and connector in this context?
Yes. So I will, and we'll go into, no, it's a very good question. So the provider, it's Sitecore. So the Sitecore provider can be used for anything, right? So it's a way to connect information or to put information within Sitecore. The SQL provider is going to read information out of SQL. A connection or a connector is putting those things together, right?
Oh, so you need both.
You would need both, right?
Oh, okay.
I mean, yes, you could use data exchange framework to put data in the same system, right? If you had two different SQL databases, sure, you could use it to move it over there. But in reality, you're going to have a SQL Sitecore. The connector is all the logic that you need to run through to put it actually in.
Nice.
Right? So the provider is a bit more generic, and so you want to be able to leverage different providers and connect data.
Okay, thank you.
I will, all this stuff, I mean, surprisingly, documentation for this was pretty good. It's not the norm. Yeah, it's not that I see a lot of smiles out there.
That's new.
I know I'm being streamed down, but everyone. All right. Let's see, where am I? You guys see up there. No. All right. Components. So this slide went out of order. So there are different components to data exchange framework. I'm going to kind of go through this quickly because I'd rather open it up and kind of walk through it. You guys can ask questions as you see it. Pipeline processor. For folks that are familiar with pipelines, it's kind of the same concept, except that remove the dependency on Sitecore, right? So you can run all of your pipelines, kind of same unit of work, kind of bite size, but you're not dependent on Sitecore. You can move it to different boxes. Context of, when you have a connector, you'll have a target, you'll have a source. And so that's the context provides where you are. And then batching allows you to kind of kick off a process. So within Sitecore pipelines, you have the huge config file. This is all through just the content editor, and you're able to configure it that way. What else? Working with data. So you have, you guys are familiar with ETL. You've got your endpoint. So depending on what you're trying to set up, so your endpoint is going to be either Salesforce, and then another endpoint is going to be Sitecore. So that's how you configure it. Read data, loop through it, write it. I mean, it's not overly complicated. I mean, they're trying to simplify it. Building one of these, you have to understand quite a few things to make it work. But once you get the hang of it, do it a couple of times, then you can see the benefit down the road. Mapping. So this is the way data comes in different formats, right? You've got a JSON file, then you got a Sitecore item. How do you map these things together? So this allows you to read and write and map data a little bit differently. Sets are kind of a class of this particular object is going to be mapped to this object. Now that I'm going through this, it is actually hard to visualize just looking at text, so I'm going to break it out in Studio in a second. A converter. So a converter is a way to, all the configuration is it is in Sitecore, so it takes it out and converts it to just regular POCOs outside of Sitecore so that it can run. Then your item repository, if it still needs to get that information, but you can run this externally. And then your tenant, and well, we talked about provider. All right, so I'm gonna keep going so we can get to something that's question of why would you spend the time creating a provider, right? So I had the same question. We've got, so a couple years ago when this just came out, we had a site provider and the community was just building other kind of fun providers, something for Dropbox, something for SQL. But there was, it felt like there was a pretty big gap, right? There was no way to say, you know what, we all right now integrate with web services, right? So where's a provider for that? So that's kind of what I went down. I was like, all right, let's see what we can do. How much effort is this? We do integrations on every project. So is this worth the effort? Here are the kind of high-level steps when you start a provider. Some of this is, again, documentation's good. I'll share the link because I documented all of this as well, because I knew I was going to forget after I did it. Define your requirements, figure out what you want to do. There's some packages that will install, and I'll show you. Create a project, create your provider. Like I said, fortunately, the SDK does a lot of the work for you now, just getting the structure set up, because when you go look at it, there are a lot of folders. Settings, tenant settings, endpoint, repository, steps, and it just works. Piece of cake. All right, so we're going to look at like the ones out of the box. You guys can play with anytime, but I wanted to kind of do a demo of creating a provider and creating a connector so you can kind of see the difference and how they all work together. Requirements. So again, you got to write requirements to make sure you're accomplishing your end goal. Wanted to be able to just communicate with RESTful services. Specify common verbs, headers, queries, parameters. Tricky part, updating parameters dynamically. Specify paging. Not going to go to that much, but if you want requests, a whole bunch of pages. So kind of back to your point on performance, instead of getting, actually, that is a good question. Now that brings it back. When I tested it the first time, I went out and you just have to update the timeout on your HTTP client. Didn't necessarily like that, so that's when I put in paging, so that you're getting smaller batches, and then it'll batch it within Sitecore, and then it'll look through it after. So that helps with performance. You obviously don't want to get. Can it handle massive objects? Sure, but it will time out eventually. So that's where the paging comes in. Limit the number of rows you want to actually pull in so that it doesn't time out. And then being able to map all of this and just a JSON object to an item in Sitecore, all without having to write any code. So someone installs the provider, they just go into Sitecore and start configuring things. So that was the end goal. All right, so let's see what we can. I'm gonna jump out of this. Have my VM set to shut off at a certain time, so make sure it doesn't shut off.
It's very odd. It's very odd.
So I have two environments up and running. Have one backup to make sure it works, and then another we're going to do it live. So with the content editor, so I haven't installed the provider yet. I've installed all the default providers that Sitecore provides that we needed.
Can you make that a little bigger, please?
Yeah, can you zoom your browser a bit?
I can, yes.
Right on.
Good? All right, there'll be a lot of scrolling, but work with me. All right, so here it's under system. You'll see that there's nothing in here. So I've installed all the providers, but I haven't installed a connector, so nothing is communicating back and forth right now. So when we come down to your templates, data exchange, you'll see the Salesforce, Sitecore, SQL, Xconnect provider. Okay. Today we're going to work on just kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier. Let's put a RESTful one in there. So I'm going to install a package. Again, doing it live, so hopefully it works. RESTful provider. Oh, now I can't see it. I'm going to have to. There we go.
It's not gonna work, trust me. It's a demo, it's not gonna work.
Next. So, let's thinking about it. Someone got a joke? Yeah.
And a Jeopardy song.
Shouldn't be that bad.
Of course not, it's running on Mac hardware.
Huh? Oh, it's a VM. It's somewhere. Yeah.
It's a remote desktop.
You're insulting Azure.
Oh, then we'll be here a while.
No, the package isn't that big. All right. Well, while we wait for that, it's what? It's something.
It's technology.
Oh, I got it. There you go. I'm gonna wait for it. All right, it's like that's too slow. So we're gonna switch over to the one I installed a little bit earlier, so that we can take a look at template, data exchange, so providers. So now we have dynamic. Oh, this is the other VM. RESTful provider and Sitecore. Let's see if this one finished. All right, good. Wasn't that bad. Go faster. Good news is I only have one more package to install. But it's really fancy after that. All right, so you guys, we just installed another provider. So when we come down here, we'll have the provider, and again, there are a lot of templates that you have to, a lot of folders, a lot of templates and things you have to set up with Data Exchange Framework. Fortunately, the SDK, if you're going to build one of these, install the SDK. Otherwise, you're copying and pasting a lot of folders, changing a lot of icons. All right. And now, so I'm going to come up here. You guys give me a time check. So system, under data exchange, there's nothing here. So we're going to install a connector real quick. So just so you guys know what we're going to connect to, I just found some site that has API out there that kind of allowed me to test a few things. It needed a subscription ID, and we can change the news that we want to see. So you guys pick the news, so you know it's not fake. You want, what's that? Is that appropriate?
Denver.
There we go.
Denver news.
We got nothing. Sport. There we go. All right. Sport Bible. Now let's go BBC Sport.
There you go.
Stay in the road now.
All right. Okay. So basically, this API it just lists 10 news articles, right? So how can we get that in Sitecore? Of course, we can build our own pipelines, integrate it that way. So what we're going to just take a look at now is our system, data exchange. So now we have, this is the connector. So it's a little bit different. So this is where all the configuration happens. So we've got our our provider endpoints. So this is the RESTful endpoint, and then this is Sitecore. So it's basically saying what two systems are communicating together. So this is the endpoint that we just looked at, and then this is the Sitecore repository. The pipelines, this is the batch to allow us to run a number of pipelines that we need. So if there's, again, there are a lot of steps, a lot of processing that you need to do, you get to configure it all here.
Was this created by the SDK?
I'll click that button next. So the framework for the tenant is by the SDK, but you're configuring all the endpoints, all the pipelines, all of the information under it. So you'll have, like, these folders get created by the SDK, all the mappings and things that you're doing below it.
I meant the package that you installed, was that something Sitecore made, or did you create that package?
I did that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the RESTful one, it's all out there. Steps through all of it is out there. But I created that package. So very simple process. It is read the items, iterate through the items. So out of the box, it comes with an iterator. Obviously, you have to iterate through the items. And then from the iterator, you get to call a different pipeline. And then it loops through, and that's what puts it in the system. All right, so this one is read your top headlines, and then pass it off to this pipeline. This pipeline resolves the item, so it has a resolver to look it up, so it's just not inserting the same item over and over. Apply the mapping, so we'll look at the mapping between the RESTful object and Sitecore, and then just update the Sitecore item. Right. So not overly complicated, but just think of what you have to do on your just building this custom.
How do you sync the pipeline? They said you have 10 articles, so it comes first article, it goes out, or how is it speaking?
So if we're gonna come here, let's see if I can click on it. It's based on the response from this article, right? So was it BBC Sport? It goes through this order. So whenever the object comes back in that order, then it takes it from the top and then loops it that way. Was that your question?
No, I was talking like, let's say that you have 10 articles, right? Mm-hmm. And then they're gonna run through the pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So how is that process running? So it goes by the dates of the articles, it goes by
the object. So it's
so sorry, I'm very I don't know much about Sitecore. So when you say an object, what is an object?
Oh, so this is the JSON.
The JSON.
It's just taking this response. So whatever configuration you have in this object, that's the order it's going to go in. So if you have, it's based on this API. So if you create an API that had sorting and all that, that's what you call, and then it'll change the order for you. But within Sitecore, it's not. There wasn't a sort. I didn't have a sort on a field.
Okay.
It's based on this configuration.
You can do anything you want with the payload once.
Yes.
You get it, like you
Once
have
you
full
get it.
control once in that pipeline.
Yeah. So there we go. So there are a couple of settings that we're going to have to change. So with dealing with RESTful services, there's headers, there are parameters that you want to be dynamic. So again, just making sure that these are available so that you can change them. So we decided that we were doing BBC-sport. So this is, let's skip one step. Resource that we're hitting. So we're hitting the top headlines. So this is the top headline. So if you wanted, like, if there was a sort order, you just put a parameter on this, and you'd be able to sort that way.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pass in the source, and that was from this parameter here, BBC Sport. Okay, save that. For this one, there is a little bit of security on it. So you need an API key. Again, something that was free, but I just wanted to make sure we tested it. You guys can have that key if you want. So paste it in here. And so now when it creates this object, it is this resource, calls a get method. Then it passes these headers in as well with the request, and along with this parameter, so it knows which ones to replace. So
you could, like, if you wanted to add a totally new header, you just create a new item.
You just
go to that folder, and it'll
just create it up here, new header, and you just stick it in there, and then it just adds it automatically. All right. So I come back here. Let's go back to the batch. Drum roll. Click run. Doing it live. Let's see. Well, I'll just go to the top. Let's see what we have. There you go.
Cool.
So there's your
It works.
There you go. So the question is
What are these sports? I don't know.
You know, let me see. Are these?
Oh my
that's a
God,
good
it's
question.
true.
It's
True.
There you go.
Okay.
So the question
Trust but
is
verify.
trust but verify. Absolutely.
That's
So BBC Sports. There you go.
Nice.
So the question is it worth the effort, right? If you're building it for a kind of one-off scenario, I would say no. My goal with this was we deal with RESTful services all the time, so let's build something and see if it works. I'll tell you, no one used it for a year, but recently folks have started using it, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. Actually, just one person, and I'm happy. But it allows if you just got to integrate, pull some data in pretty quickly. It's configuration based. You can make changes if someone wants to change the type of articles. Like now, I'm like, well, I don't want BBC Sports, I want something else. Just go and update a Sitecore item, do an import, and you're good to go.
Sweet.
So
it's on the marketplace, right? Once.
Yes. So here's my advertising. Everything. So we didn't have time. Yeah, I'm already over.
No, you're good.
So from a code standpoint. 7 minutes? All right. From a coding standpoint, I didn't go into it as much because you guys can't see it. But everything that we just walked through is out here. So I got to update it a little bit, but 1.4 and 2.0 are available, and all the code's there. The packages are out there. It's in the marketplace. Documentation's there. And because I knew I was going to forget about it, I followed a very similar pattern as the Sitecore documentation on how to use it and how to build your own. Right. Mm-hmm. So the Sitecore documentation from a creating a custom provider was great with getting you started. You will need your favorite friend of .peep to decompile and look at some of the other providers to get the actual secrets on how to build it. Everyone here is probably familiar with that. So I tried to share what I found through that process. So if you just want to use it just to configure it, yeah, we just did it in 5 minutes, right? But if you actually want to kind of build your own and connect with different services, different headers, kind of walk through just creating a connector. Steps are a little bit different, pretty much all in Sitecore, right? But then if you want to go to creating a provider, this is, I showed you the list of requirements. This talks about each step, right? So every setting, kind of, there you go. I don't want to read this, but it does help to have someone walk through it and kind of follow the steps because there are a lot of parts and pieces. And I'm going to do one last thing. Just fast. Go here, SDK. So create provider, demo. This will take us out, so this will just run for a while, but this is where it starts generating all of the templates and the relationships that you have to go back in and update.
That's the SDK.
That's the SDK, yeah. So all of these particular folders get created for you. Like in the previous version, you had to do all this manually. So if you're into it, make sure you download the SDK, get it installed, and have fun. There's my overview. Any other questions you guys?
What other providers have you seen that are out there? They have a Salesforce one, right?
Yeah. Oh, so Sitecore, those are the Sitecore ones. So Sitecore has the providers for SQL Server, XConnect, Sitecore, and then Salesforce and Dynamics. Now they have one for Forms as well. Outside of that, it's a good question. Let's look at it right now. So just when I was doing research and looking around, here were the other ones. So someone created one for Dropbox and Reddit, and XML, and there's the text file one. So cool. Yeah. What other questions?
Yeah.
So for something one-off import from SharePoint of 6,000 items, never going to be used again. Not using DEF or SharePoint.
Never. What is not going to be used again?
This is a one-time migration.
So it depends on the configuration. Will probably not be used again, but if you can build a provider that you're going to reuse again, creating the provider's worth it.
So like if you're never going to shoot SharePoint again, right? Like maybe not for that project, but you could do the provider.
You could do the provider because you'll use it.
Or
someone else will use it, right? There are a lot of sites still on SharePoint.
But theoretically, if it wasn't going to be reused, it's not worth it.
It's a good learning experience. But,
just do it.
If you're not going to reuse it, I would be hesitant to go through the effort, right?
I mean, if the customer's doing a one-time migration, then probably not. But if you're a service provider, then yeah, probably.
Then it's yeah. Good to go.
Sweet.
Sounds good. Yeah. All benefits, so I'll encourage you to do it so I can put it on Marketplace.
Yeah, I can just yell. Okay, and now we're going to have Kenny come and talk about Agile Context Marketing. Yeah, please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody. While I get set up, if anybody needs to have a bio break, certainly go ahead and do that. Yeah, I'll take 5 minutes while I get myself.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Still sandwiches and veggies.
I'll be kind to your ladder.
So
Jack, as long as everyone's okay with that, not me.
Yeah,
solutions.
Controller, rest call, parse it, let's go.
And storing it together.
Okay, yeah.
You don't need to actually see the just need that information.
Yeah. You don't really Well, I think situations where like you're doing something, especially when you want to be having a content manager, like enrich the information later, that's kind of, that makes sense to me. So, you know, the source, get this, and then attach some other information. Yeah, configuring the parameters and then the mappings and stuff. So we've done this really on the provider stuff that supposedly you got parameters and mapping. If you've got different data types, yeah, you should be able to put that items and stuff.
Got a couple other uses for it.
Yeah, good. A number of different things I can think of actually.
I'm kind of interested in the picture.
Oh, washing? Oh, sorry.
Someone actually access to
Not just store,
Just don't show. No, I just don't show.
yeah, there's a bit of a glare. It sounded like on the TV.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's good.
Achieved ROI on our ops manager, everyone.
Yeah, on the commerce stuff. Yeah, the product stuff is sort of got this one.
Did you get in? Okay. Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. If there's ever a meetup where they want to collaborate, feel free to send them our way because we're really big into that.
Amy Winburn.
Okay.
She's
Amy Winburn. Okay, I'm gonna write this down.
She grew up in Toronto, Queens Quay.
Oh, nice.
And so she comes here every Christmas.
Okay. Amy Winburn. Is it like literally like Winburn?
Winburn, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She has she's the one that.
That's it
She's
up?
the main one that starts that up.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of other people do as well, but she comes to Toronto quite a bit because
Nice.
her sister still lives in Queens Quay.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, I would love to connect with her. We do have like a Women in Build. It's like our chapter about the women in Slow and Build. Regardless if you're technical or not, it's just a whole bunch of fun things. Totally.
At symposium, women of Sitecore do like special panels and things like that as well. So it's really good for you to get.
Definitely.
So I think try to have a picture of that and so that they know.
Amazing. Yeah, tweet it out.
Because the more of those organizations can collaborate, the more we'll get.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm ready.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I love it. Awesome, cool. Well, I will definitely.
All right. Yeah, we're good. We're good to go. So yeah, Ken is going to talk about Agile Context Marketing. So I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, so I'm Ken Gray from Tech Guilds Consulting, and my topic, as you all know, is context marketing. I was actually very nervous about presenting to all these smart people, so bear with me as I get nervous and present. A little bit about Tech Guilds. If you don't know who we are, we've been around for about 4 years or so. We're Sitecore specialists. That's all we do is Sitecore. We mentor. We started out as mentors to other Sitecore partners, and we've solution architecting as well as development. What we also do that's unique in the marketplace and has been fairly unique for a number of years is we also do Sitecore support. So normally you would submit a ticket to Sitecore and you would get answers back and stuff like that, but we also provide Sitecore support and managed services to our clients, which is fairly unique. Another thing that we do that's very unique as well is we do training. So we've developed about 6 different courses on Sitecore, and as well as SBOSS workshops. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with SBOSS. Anybody familiar with SBOSS? Sitecore Business Optimization Services. Basically, it's Sitecore's initiative to basically help everybody get to what we used to call the mythical phase 2, which is utilizing the platform to its fullest capabilities. And so today I'm going to talk about some of those discoveries or some of the things that people sometimes or companies don't get to, but they want to get to. Why they buy Sitecore. I'm going to walk through a scenario. Most of it will be on my slides because I didn't want to run into demo gods. So I just kind of put everything here as slide decks and screen share. So we'll do that. So my goals and approach, obviously, provide a real-world understanding of Sitecore's features and inner workings, as well as a collaborative approach. So I like to get feedback. I know we're all developers and we like to just suck in the information, but anything that you have to contribute, I welcome that. I'm not the smartest or sharpest nail in the room or sharpest tack in the room, but I believe in collaboration and just working with everybody's collective knowledge. So today, as I present, anything that you want to add, certainly add, and any questions as we did with our young man here, and just great presentation. Another round of applause for him. So definitely feel free to jump in at any time. Agile marketing is admittedly a sexy buzzword, but at its core, what is Agile marketing? Agile marketing is a tactical marketing approach in which teams, a very key word, identify and focus their collective efforts on high-value projects, complete these projects cooperatively, and then measure their impact, and then continuously and incrementally improve the results over time. Basically like Agile. Anybody here familiar with Agile methodology, right? I hope so. You're all developers, right? Okay, so so incrementing over time is very important. I find that with Sitecore, because it's so big, a lot of companies, when they buy it, they like the bells and whistles. Sitecore does a great job in marketing their product. But then when they get it in-house and they get their instance installed and developed on, they're not sure where to begin with the actual key features of Sitecore. You could buy WordPress if you wanted a CMS, but that's not what Sitecore is about. Sitecore is about a marketing automation and digital experience or customer experience management platform. So it's basically designed to help your customers get the most out of their experience on your website and any other digital platform that they're using their content to distribute through, as well as your mobile phone and so on. So what some of the first steps to Agile marketing is obviously establish your team. No man is an island, and in Agile marketing or in marketing in general, there's going to be a lot of moving parts and a lot of skill sets that you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need strategists, you're going to need developers possibly, you're going to need someone who can actually manipulate the content, someone to design the content, so all of that. Also with that, as you deal with your companies and they want to know how to do this sort of thing, you want to know what their strategic themes are. And I'm going to talk a little bit, I'll give you some examples of what a strategic theme is. But that's a good starting point. So you got to understand where they're going with their business. What do they want their business to be known by? And then obviously we want to make sure that everybody's in alignment. The SBOSS services, they have a game that they play. It's a Sitecore business optimization game, where they basically get a bunch of people in a room and they play this game, and the game is designed to align the stakeholders. Because if one stakeholder says this is our priority and another stakeholder says this is our priority, and then the content author is like, well, which one is priority, right? So we want to make sure that we get our stakeholders aligned. So these are all ensuring our readiness. Before we can even start putting pen to paper, as it were, you want to make sure we do these things. And then obviously, are your analytics working? No point getting into marketing or Sitecore marketing if you don't have your analytics turned on and working, because we're going to use that information then to gather the data to get to optimize the experience for your customers, the people that are going to be using your website. And then obviously, have you defined your engagement value scale? Have anyone heard that term before, engagement value? This is probably one of the most important and also the most misunderstood aspects of Sitecore. The engagement value is what differentiates Sitecore from any other platform out there, as far as its marketing analytics and so on. You can use Google Analytics and get aggregated data, number of visits and all that type of stuff. But the engagement value is designed to actually measure the behavior, not necessarily what's the how many people are doing what on your website. So the engagement value is important, and determining what your value scale is. It could be 0 to 10, it could be 0 to 100, is important, and that's one of the first steps to getting started with using Sitecore as a marketing automation and a customer engagement platform. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the engagement value scale, but most companies, depending on the amount of content and the number of steps within your customer journey. Anybody familiar with that term, customer journey? I'm going to throw a lot of jargon at you. So if I throw words at you or jargon at you in the marketing sphere that you're not used to, just let me know. Say, what's that mean? But your customer journey will have many steps along the way, like we call milestones or stop signs or signposts along the way that get them from first engagement to your brand or or to your website or your product or your service to actually making the decision to do business with you, right? And so along that journey, you're going to have different things that actually convert into a sale. So, for example, you might have watching a video might produce some value points. So after they watch a video, they're more engaged, and maybe they're going to sign up for a newsletter or something like that. And those things actually give you an understanding of the behavior or what's going to lead to an actual sale, right? An actual conversion. And so engagement value is very important. And so the next part obviously is, have you determined your key metrics? So once you're collecting all this data, do you know what you actually want to track, and do you actually know what are the what makes it a success? What will make your campaign a success? You know, how many of these XYZ conversions is going to actually convert to a profit within your company? All right. So now that we've got all of that out of the way in terms of all these things we have to make sure we're running. So let's talk about the engagement value scale. I've already talked about it. It's more than just visits. It's actually what Sitecore uses to do personalization. It's actually used in all of the analytics reports. You'll find we have the visits, and then you also have value, right? And then you also have value per visit. And all of those can be used to actually get a better understanding of how engaged your customers are. Is anybody watching the time?
Yeah, I got you.
I should probably put up my phone as well. I talk fast as well. Like, I'm from the East Coast, Nova Scotia. Anybody know about Nova Scotia? We talk fast there. And so if I talk too fast, let me know as well. As I mentioned, it can be used as a condition for personalization. But again, it's very pivotal to Sitecore and the way it measures engagement. And then it can use, obviously, to measure the results of advanced functionality. In Sitecore, they have this thing called A/B testing. Anybody familiar with A/B testing? Right? So engagement value is what Sitecore uses to automatically determine a winner for any of the engagement value or any of the A/B testing or ABN testing, ABN being multivariate testing that you do on your website. So engagement scale or engagement value is very important. It also measures the quality of the traffic in your content. So if you know that one piece of your content, if you tag your content with an engagement value, you can actually determine how much of your content is being consumed and how valuable that content is. And that obviously that makes sense, or it's valuable to you as a marketer, because now you know what content do I need to take down and what content should I promote more, because that's going to drive that engagement value and hopefully a conversion on the sales side of things. What else? All right, so here's an example of how one company or a B2B company might kind of break up their engagement value scale. So from 0 to 100, these are the types of activities that may generate or lead to a sale. So obviously requesting a call is like 100%. Like, yeah, they requested a call, so now you're on the phone talking to them, right? That's probably a high likelihood that you can convert somebody that's actually wanting to talk to you, right? Maybe watching a video might not, it might, right? Give you some engagement or something might lead to a conversion. But in this particular example, they've marked it at 0, but you can change that based on your customer, based on your website, based on your strategic objectives, and based on how you know that your content is performing. So if you know that watching a video, after they watch a video, they call you right away. If you know that, then you would obviously move that up to scale. And you can change this, right? You can adjust, what value you assign to what activity on your website or within Sitecore. And I'm going to show you some of the areas where you do all these little pieces and put them together. Engagement value used for personalization. So this is an example of the rule set editor. Anybody ever been in the rule set editor? All right, good. So in there, Sitecore, out of the box, Sitecore comes with a whole bunch of rules, and one of them is the ability to, do I have my pointer in here? Maybe not. But you notice at the bottom here, we have, with a number of engagement value points compares to a number. So you can actually specify within Sitecore, within the rules, and do some personalization based on the number of points that someone has actually built up through their engagement through your website. So if you know that they've watched a video and then they've signed up for a form, and then you know that the next step for them is to actually make a call, you can actually present content based on those value points that they've accumulated and say, hey, call us right now, and then that will take them to the next step and then hopefully get a conversion. Measurement planning. What you measure, you can optimize for. So it's important that you actually plan out your measurement. What are your KPIs? What are your overall business objectives? We talked about the strategic themes. I'm going to show you them in a second. Any questions on that? Am I going too fast, too slow? How's the pace? Pace is good?
Good.
Yeah, pace is not
Good.
good?
Yeah, it's good.
Good. All right. Everybody wants to go home. That's why, right? You're not going home too soon. What KPIs to measure the success of your marketing tactics? Everybody understands what marketing tactics are? Sort of, kind of, don't want to know?
No.
What's an example? What's an example of a
I'm going to just keep asking questions as somebody answers.
What is an example? What's an example of marketing?
Marketing tactic?
Yeah.
Basically, a marketing tactic is any activity you want to perform. Putting a video on a site, a registration form, anything that's what do you want them to do to convert a client of yours? The grouping of your marketing activities, I'm going to talk about this. So in a particular marketing campaign, any marketers in the room, by the way? I didn't even ask that question at the beginning. Who's a marketing person? No marketers? Wow, awesome.
No, hey.
All right, so I can say anything I want. Nobody knows. If I'm lying, cheating, stealing, it's awesome. All right, good stuff. All right, so basically, you can let's say we're running a campaign for summer barbecue or something like that, like a summer campaign, and we want to drive engagement for some particular sale, right? All those activities that I'm doing within my marketing program would be our marketing activities. So let's say, for example, I'm going to put a Facebook ad out there. I'm going to put a LinkedIn ad out there. I'm going to host a Sitecore user group, promoting my barbecue. I'm going to send out an email blast. So all of those activities around this one marketing campaign, which is my summer marketing campaign to drive some sales, would go into a group. And you can do that in Sitecore. And then you can track which of those activities actually generated the most return for my marketing spend, right? Which is what companies want to know, right? Like today, you talk to any marketer, what's the biggest thing they're going to tell you? Well, my boss wants to know which of my marketing dollars are generating the most sales. Well, we can say, well, you know what? Our Facebook ads suck. But the slalom, SUG, everybody showed up and we actually got 20 sales, right? So you can do that with grouping your activities into a campaign so you can see which campaigns work. And you can compare campaigns. Well, maybe our fall campaign didn't do as well as our summer campaign, and here's why. And you can compare all of that using Sitecore. And I'm going to show you where those pieces kind of fit together. And then obviously targets for each KPI. So once you determine, I want to measure how many people showed up for my barbecue, how many is a success, right? Is 10 a success? Is 100 a success? You want to know what those targets are, and then you can measure against them. Determining your strategic theme. So strategic themes help you organize or group related strategic objectives to work together to deliver a specific valuable business result. And the key is not to take on too many. So if you think about a particular brand, let's say BMW, what do you think of?
Luxury.
What?
Luxury.
Luxury, right? How about Dell? Since we're all techs, Dell. What do you think about it? Low cost, right?
No, it's not low cost.
Oddly enough, it's not. You're right. You're absolutely right. Oddly enough, they're actually more expensive than I find a lot of times. I remember when I was dealing with them years ago, I was like, they're not cheap, but they position themselves as cheap, right? Then you get all these add-ons, like, yeah, you get a base model, with a 14K, whatever. But each company has a way they want to position themselves in a marketplace. They have a business strategic theme that they want to position. Sitecore, what's Sitecore? Anyone know what Sitecore's strategic theme is? One stop shop for everything, right? They want to be as a total solution, right? So you got your marketing, you got your analytics, you've got what else have you got? You got all the everything, e-commerce. They want to be known as the one place to get everything, right? And so here's some examples. So Lexus highest quality, BMW high performance. And there's Sitecore right here, right? Total solution, right? IBM. So once you determine these strategic themes, then you can then begin to position your content and everything else. So agile marketing tactics. So what I say to do is to get started with agile marketing, start with what's low-hanging fruit. This is all pickled fruit. I know it's cheesy, I'm mad at cheese. But use what's in the box. I mean, there's a lot out of the box with Sitecore that you can do as far as personalization without actually having to do any code. Sorry, developers. Don't throw anything. But actually, right out of the box, you can actually begin to do stuff with Sitecore that you can't do with other platforms. And you don't have to do a lot of rigmarole to get it done. As I mentioned, the value scale is important. Determine that. Questions?
Yeah, example of low-hanging fruit.
A low-hanging fruit would be like putting a form on a web page. That's right out of the box. I'm not going to show you an example of that, but you can put a form on a web page, and right away you're going to increase engagement. You can also get analytics on that. Sitecore will actually tell you out of the box in 9.0 and forward. When you put a form on a page, how many times it was abandoned, how many times it was submitted, what fields were abandoned and which fields were not abandoned. And right away you can determine, maybe I'm putting too many fields on my form, right? And then, so that's one low-hanging fruit. And again, what does it take to put up a form on a web page? Like a Sitecore form, 5 minutes? Really? Like it's not even that long. And then, of course, don't bite off more than you can chew. Keeping with the low-hanging fruit thing. So, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And we talked about agile. What's agile, right? Incremental over time. So, yeah, you put a form on the page. Now you got some general basic analytics going for you. Then now you want to maybe track how many people submitted the form versus landing on the page, right? And then personalize based on that. And then grow from where you are. So don't bite off more than you chew, and then grow. Just add on to it. Add on to it. Add on to it. So maybe you want to create some goals after that, right? And then personalize based on those goals. 36, we're good. Very good. Sitecore Agile Marketing steps. Conceptualize, prepare your assets, assemble the pieces, and then tweak, analyze, or test, analyze, and tweak. So conceptualize, obviously, once you have a concept in mind, then you can actually begin to execute on that concept and prepare your assets. Like I mentioned, the team, right? So let's say, for example, in our example, we're going to basically create a landing page. Well, we have a webinar coming up, and we want all the CMOs and decision makers to show up at this webinar, and then and we want to drive as many registrations as possible for this webinar, because we know that once they're at the webinar, they're going to be potential customers, and we can sell them once they get to the webinar. So we want to drive registrations. So here's the concept. Campaign concept is webinar for CMOs and marketers. Then we want to drive registrations. That's our goal. And what's our plan? Our plan is to drive traffic from various channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. Our online traffic, Google Ads, whatever way you're going to drive traffic, hosting a slalom event. And then we want to track their visitors, personalize, foster greater engagement, and then ask for referrals to increase the registrations. So once somebody is actually registered for the event, why not actually ask them for a referral? Like, hey, send this to your friend, right? And then they can show up. And then, of course, analyze the channel effectiveness. No point doing anything if you're not going to measure it and make it more effective, right? You want to basically increase your effectiveness of everything that you do. And if you can automate some of this stuff, we're not going to get into that tonight as far as marketing automation. Maybe the next 6 months or whatever, if I can come back, I can do marketing automation. But we're not going to get into that. It's way too long, too big. But this is our page that I created. Very simple. So some assets that we were going to need. Obviously, we need an image. There's an image behind there. Down below here, there was actually a video. But I just took the top part of the screen. There's our form to complete, and there's some content. So we're going to create some campaign groups for our assets and activities. We're going to determine what goals to track. Obviously messaging, what do you want to say? So you have copywriters. So there's a whole bunch of people that need to be involved on your team. It could be one person, right? If you got a real savvy person that can do all of this stuff, great. I used to be that one guy at smaller organizations, but it's a lot to do in Sitecore. But once you've got your assets together, putting them and making a campaign is very easy. So we have some calls to actions, we call this registration form. And that's it. So assembling the pieces, we're going to create some goals, upload and publish the media, create a landing page, add a form, test and measure. Campaigns, goals, and activities. So you mentioned that what is a low-hanging fruit? So who completed our form would be a first layer, and then who landed on the page but didn't submit, we can track that. And then when somebody returns, let's say someone goes to the site, lands on our landing page, goes away, and then comes back and then converts. We want to know that too. We can track that. So that's a third layer, right? There's a few more things you need to do. And then the fourth layer, we want to know if our campaign was effective and which channels drove those conversions. That's another layer. So low-hanging fruit, layer one, and then as you go down, you can layer on different aspects of Sitecore. And I'm going to get right into that now. So as per your question, this is Sitecore Analytics, or Sitecore Forms Analytics. Very, very basic, but it actually tells you some stuff, right? Like you can tell you how many unique views, how many abandonments, what's your abandonment rate. Then you can also check the average time. You can check the error rate. If someone clicks and actually produces an error, you can find that out. The email that was abandoned. So if you click on this radio button, these things without hero change. So you can say the abandonment rate, 50%, 50 of the email, 50 of the telephone. So maybe we need to get rid of our telephone because obviously we want the email. But that's the analytics. In the Sitecore tree, we will create a landing page, but not just a landing page. You can use other pages, obviously a thank you page. In Sitecore, you can just put a form and then have that form using Ajax to send you the thank you for your submission and we're good. But I find that with a landing page, you actually get more engagement. So you can actually add some other upselling language or even, ask a friend or something like that. Or send to a friend. Another part is aliases or vanity URLs. So if you're doing print as well as digital, then you can use your vanity URL on a flyer or something. Or of course, if you want to send this in an email to somebody or text it to somebody, having a vanity URL as well. So when you think about creating for your customers as a developer, and they say, oh, we want a landing page. Well, don't just think about a landing page. Think about all the other ways that you can create engagement or to simplify the sharing of the information that you want. So aliases are great for that. Anybody ever use aliases in Sitecore? All right, cool. Because some people have a little bit of confusion as to what they are. Vanity URLs is the other word, but aliases actually are language independent as well. So you can actually, drive somebody to a specific language if you have, your campaign driving to a language. Who landed on the page? So within Sitecore, if you want to basically create a goal, very simple. You go to the marketing control panel, and then under the taxonomies, I don't know why they put it here. Like taxonomy, I don't know. I would think put it high level, right? But under taxonomies and goals, or sorry, under goals, and then you would have under taxonomies, you have other things like tagging and so on. And this is your engagement value, right there, 3, right? So landing on the page for me is 3 points, right? Not a lot of value just because you landed on a page doesn't mean you're going to convert to a sale. But at least I know that you landed on the page, and I can track that, and that'll show back up in the experience analytics. All right, so we've got that piece. So of course we set up our scale already, so we can now add the value here, and then that's our goal. Let's be trade. So what do you do with that goal? You actually attach it to a page, and I'll show you that a little later. But here is our tracking our campaign effectiveness. We would have under the marketing control panel. This is the one I was talking about. Yeah. So under taxonomies, you have your campaign group. Not sure why it's there. I would actually like to see that outside of the taxonomies. But here's where you can create. So there's our Agile Marketing, right? So I can create the campaign around that, and that group and any activities I do, LinkedIn campaigns, Google AdWords, I can list them all or assign them this group, and I'll show you where that's done in a second. and I'll probably drop into the Sitecore backend so you can see all these little clicks around. But your groups will have activities, and then you assign your group, and then all the activities would have a campaign ID, and that would tie back into your groups, and then now you can compare campaign against campaign. So think about your campaign groups as your campaigns. Sitecore, anybody like Sitecore, the way they name things?
Everybody?
It's very convoluted sometimes. So you'll see the word campaign thrown around in so many different areas. And they'll talk about campaigns, and you're thinking, okay, what's that? Is that a campaign activity? Is that a campaign group? Or is that a campaign? Like, what are you talking about? So for me, I like to think of campaigns as campaign groups. So a campaign is a group of activities, right? And I think that's kind of how Sitecore is thinking about it as well. But they use the word so loosely that it gets confusing for content marketers and people using Sitecore. These are campaign activities, and those are found in the campaign creator. Anybody been in the campaign creator, or you see that? So the campaign creator, it would be a link that I would actually attach to my social media post, right? And anyone clicks on that link, Sitecore would track that interaction and put it into the analytics. And then on these, and I'll show you next screen. So these are two different activities that are attached to my group or to my campaign. And so I can track how many came from Facebook and how many came from LinkedIn. And we can just keep adding activities. Even if they're offline activities, you can add them here, and then Sitecore will track that. Tracking offline is a little bit harder because now you have to have somebody kind of manually specify, or if you have a connector, if you have a data exchange, right, you can connect into your CRM and all that stuff, and you get all those engagements, the 360-degree view with the customer, right? So there you go. This is each of those activities that you just saw. This is the, anybody familiar with Google UTM codes, right? So this is the equivalent to a Google UTM. So everything that you see, like, you know how Google has media and all the different UTMs, Sitecore just uses the one. And then you will create an activity that's specific for it, and then you attach this to your link. So this is my campaign link for Facebook. Then I have another one of these for engagement from LinkedIn and so Google AdWords, whatever. When you attach that to the link, Sitecore will then track all of that engagement that happens. So you don't need to specify all the, because we've already created the group. We put the activity in the group. Now we have the campaign code, and that campaign code now connects and associates all of the interactions using cookies, obviously, on Sitecore, to then push all of that data back into analytics. So I know exactly what campaign they were engaged in. I know where they came from, and I know everything else that they did on the website. Every page they visited, every form they submitted, all of that is done through a single link, which is really cool. Test, measure, and complete. So what you put value on, you can optimize for. So here's an example of goals and experience letter. So you can test, measure, and tweak in many different ways. So obviously we talked about analytics a lot, but there's other things. Experience profile. Anybody ever done anything with experience profile? I love experience profile. It's like when you can connect it with everything, like someone submits a form, they're no longer anonymous to you. You actually know their email address. You can associate a photo. You can connect it to your their social media accounts and pull in all that data. And you can then see all of their interactions from the very first point of contact. So even if they didn't fill out a form for like a year, well, maybe not a year because I think cookies expire after a year, but as long as that cookie is alive on that site, the experience profile will collect all that data, and then you can then surface it and know the customer on an individual basis. The path analyzer is another way you can do. Anyone use the path analyzer at all? So the path analyzer shows you where they landed, and then all the different areas that they might have gone through, or all the different pages that they might have gone through on your website. So the path analyzer is really good. I think Google has another similar tool where you can track through each click, each page they went through. So they landed on the home page, then they went to our about page, then they went to our product page, and then they submitted the form. And then you can optimize that experience so that maybe they're getting to the end goal quicker. Experience optimization relies heavily on this is the A/B testing section. So if you want to know what's happening with your A/B tests throughout a period of time, you would use the experience optimization. And again, the engagement value is what experience optimization uses to kind of pick a winner of your tests and to show you what's the most efficient way to optimize your testing or optimize your content. This is the experience profile. Available since 8.0. You can look at specific visitor engagement or type of social connector by named visitor. So notice you have a person's picture and all that stuff. And you have different areas. So you have the overview, you have the profile, you have the social over here. This is activity with just every single interaction that they've ever had on your website. It's all connected and stored. So I'm going to pop over real quick to just so you can see it in the actual environment. I know it shows you a lot of screens. Is it there? Is it not there? Am I not sure? No, I'm actually split screen. Good. All right. I can use my laptop. Okay, yeah. I'm adjusting. All right, so here we are. So we talked about creating a form. Obviously, that's Sitecore forms, right? Do I need to go into this one? That's normally pretty easy, right? But this is the path analyzer. But the most important ones, marketing control panel. Oh, nice. See, this is why I didn't want to do this.
Broke it.
Oh, you know what it is? I'm not on VPN. All right, so what time is it? Maybe.
7.
Huh?
Did you ask what time it was?
Yeah, I got my clock. Yeah.
Cool.
I got till 8, I think.
You're good. Don't worry about
Where's my VPN? Yeah. You know what? I'm not even going to bother wasting your time. I would encourage you to explore. Where's my mouse? I would encourage you to just go ahead and explore. I'll just point to the. Oh, look at that.
Could I offer? I want to maybe just offer something while you're doing that. I know that there's a lot of technical people in the room, right?
Yes.
So one thing that I've been exposed to over and over again as an implementer, and you are going to find whether you work at an agency or at Sitecore customer, a lot of you developers and architects are going to work with customers who are in that what Ken talked about, that mythical phase. They're waiting for the mythical phase 2 to happen. They're not using the features in Sitecore, and it pains you. You're like, Sitecore is so cool. I'm so happy to be working with it, but they never get to it, and they just never do it, right? So if you're like, whether you work with the client doing requirements or you're a developer, I'm going to encourage you to do a little bit of stealth CX kind of marketing, and look for opportunities when you're doing things like a form. Since it does take very little work to actually set up like a campaign and put some engagement value on it, or look for opportunities to suggest things like that. You get a requirement for a form, and they're not using any of the features of Sitecore because they just haven't got there organizationally, right? You can look beyond your role and do a little thing that's going to make your life a little bit better by saying, hey, why don't we track how many people complete this form or abandon this form, and just track that in a campaign. Well, I'll send some value to it. You don't have to know how to do it. I'll just do it, and we'll deploy that. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get some numbers that the CMO or the marketing people who sign the checks are going to be able to look at. And they're like, you know what? That's useful. We should do more of that, right? So I'm going to encourage all of the tech geeky people not to ignore the marketing features of Sitecore. And even though your organization or the stakeholders or those people in marketing who are doing things the same old way want to keep doing it that way, look for opportunities to add that to the conversation when you get the requirement on the board or you talk to the client. And it's a 5-minute thing that you can do in the back end, even if they didn't ask for it, because what that's going to do is to have more of them start to use the feature of the platform. It's going to be better budgets for you. It's going to be better and more rewarding work and stuff that means more than let's just change the banner because somebody doesn't like it, right? So that's what I just want to offer that to the marketing folks. Don't ignore, the technical folks, don't ignore these marketing features. You can do it yourself, even if the organization is not digitally ready. You can do it yourself.
That's actually great input. And in fact, what I found working with customers is that when you begin to show them what they already know to do and they see how simple it is, then they begin to get more creative. And what does more creative mean? More development work, right? Because now they want to extend it beyond what is out of the box. Remember, everything I'm showing you is just really out of the box, but there's a lot more that Sitecore can do with connectors and different other things that they're maybe using. That's when you guys come in, right?
Absolutely. You hear a conversation in a stand-up about whether we should have this field on a form or the other field on a form. Why don't you say, why don't we just do them both, and we'll A/B test it?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of an input, right? It's just such a simple thing to have it as an input, and all of a sudden your profile with regards to adding value to the organization has really improved a lot. So just do those little things, and you're going to have a much better experience.
Exactly. So creating a page, we all know how to create a page in Sitecore, very straightforward. Creating a form is equally straightforward. As I got my VPN connected, thanks to Dennis for buying me some time.
That's what I'm here for, man.
Yeah, man. Teamwork makes the
That's right.
dream work, right?
I play defense, man. That's my thing.
Yeah, both hands, right?
That's right, boy.
So here's my webinar registration form. Offense and defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this field literally who hasn't seen forms demonstrated? Really? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. He's not. He's not. Okay, good. So
What is to come?
But you all know this, right?
Yeah.
So basically, if you look at, this is my submit button down here. I've actually got tracking a goal, right? And where's my edit? Actually, I can just do it. See, I was splitting before, now I'm not splitting, so now so in here, right? So there's my webinar registration completed. So when someone clicks on that button, it's going to trigger the goal that the registration is completed. Now, that's an okay way to track that goal, but what if the form doesn't actually finish submitting, right? Which means they didn't get to the thank you page. So that's why I think thank you pages are good, because now you can track on the thank you page rather than on the button itself, right? Maybe somewhere in there the server died or something, and the data didn't actually get transmitted, right? So that would be a false positive that they actually completed and they did. So yeah, so that's simple as that. You can track. So I've already set up my goals, so now I can reference them in my campaign. And setting up a goal, how easy is that? Let's go take a look. Setting up a goal. So we come in here into our marketing control panel, and you can create these as many as you like. There's no limit, except for your Sitecore performance and all that stuff. But really, I want to create a goal. Insert goal. Today goal. Like, did anyone time me? I think it was like 30 seconds, right? And it's out of the box. Like, I mean, you can track and you can create these and put them on pages, right? They landed on this page because they came from whatever ad, and then you track that. And well, maybe not that quick. You don't have to worry about marketing assets. That's a deeper topic. But down here, here's where we set up our value points. So I'm going to say, yeah, this goal was 52, right? It's whatever. Again, the scale is up to you and what value you want to attach to this particular goal, whatever it happens to be, whatever activity they're doing. And I've got 3 minutes. I'm going to go to questions just after this one last thing. So I can attach my goals to a page. Anyone not familiar how to do that? All right, except for you. You're not allowed to answer any questions.
And
You're on
I have like 10 questions for you.
Excellent. Oh, great. I got a server. Like Sitecore. Any devs in the house? You know what? For the sake of time, and I love to respect time, so for the sake of time, I'm not going to bother wasting it. But if you want to actually talk to me about this afterward, we're going to have social time and stuff. I can maybe sit down with you one-to-one, but I want to respect everybody's time. So I'm going to wrap it up and call it questions. One second. Is it questions? It's questions. And I can send this out to anybody that wants it, and I can send my notes along with it. Yep, method analytics. Questions and feedback. Oops.
You are welcome.
There we go, questions. No more questions? Okay. You're not allowed. Go ahead.
No, you can go
Ladies
first.
first.
You can
Sure.
go first.
Why not?
Oh, sure.
Stand up, state your name.
I just want to ask my question.
Go for it.
So I had a question. I know one of your slides had a dropout rate when people were filling out the form.
Yes.
I'm curious, what are some of the reasons why they drop out after they fill it in halfway?
Could be a timeout issue, that's technical, but on a personal level, if there's so many, but for us, it was just, we're just doing testing, so we just go to the page, start filling, and we just wanted to show the analytics. But on a user level, like a real world experience, it could be too many fields on a form, could be the one reason, or the type of information that you're asking for, maybe too personal, I don't want to share that with you. So I started filling it out, or maybe I got distracted, I'm a single mom at home, and my baby starts crying, and I'm like in the middle of the form, I'm like, okay, gotta go deal with the baby. Any number of reasons. Yeah, but distractions typically, and also the type of information you're asking for tend to be those reasons. But you can test for that, right? You can then say, okay, well, let's ask the question. Now that we've got the data, right? Especially if they've done something else, we can, next time they come back, oh, we noticed you landed on the page, but you didn't fill out the form because we tracked it using our goals, right? Any reason why you didn't fill out the form? And then you can leave a list, right? 1, 2, 3, other, and if they put other, then you can get that information if they're willing to tell you. Right? Some of them might lie. My cat had kittens, or my dog had kittens. Or something.
Do you use the analytics to track that, or do you use it like before they submit the form or after they submit?
So after they submit the form, you would be able to see that the number, like on that in the forms area, it shows you how many people abandoned. Then you could actually input a step in your campaign to ask for that information. So you can say the next time they come back, we want to know why they abandoned the form, right? You can add that as a step if you're getting a high bounce rate, right, on your form. So,
would you know
does that make sense?
Demographic of those who drop out?
Not off the bat, but you can get that information if you explore more with them, connect them with social media, like have them log in the next time using social media, right? Something like that. Yes, Chris?
Can you add like a goal to a text box or something on your form so that you don't have to wait for them to do submit, or would you have that be custom?
I think that's going to be custom. I haven't seen that out of the box, but 9.2's out, so who knows? Yeah, I haven't seen it.
I don't think done what with Sitecore forms you mean?
Yeah, like I know you can do that.
Attaching a goal to a field. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
you'd
it.
have to do a custom field. I can see why you wouldn't be able to just call the APIs.
But I'm thinking, what sort of thing would you want to track on that?
Well, you just want to know if they're like if they're on a certain field when they abandon, then you're more likely that it's like, oh well, I asked them for their address and they're on the address field and they've failed, right?
Well, it does tell you when you click on abandon which fields are abandoning more, right? Like it'll put a number beside each field, so that will tell you kind of which fields are problem fields, but it wouldn't necessarily tell you what specific user abandoned which, right?
Yeah.
So, but I like it's a good idea.
So that's part of the.
If you want to get that granular, so you can get as granular as you want with your analytics.
Those are still part of the built-in reports with regards to the Sitecore forms.
Yeah, it'll tell you what fields were abandoned and how many.
So that's going to.
Yeah. But if you want to go granular, like one person, this particular person abandoned this field, so the next time they come back, you can
hide that field.
You can say, hey,
yeah,
right, yeah, that gets creepy though. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we saw that you didn't fill out your social insurance number. Not because you're. No. Any other? Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, I have a few actually.
Okay, go for it.
So first one is how do you guys work with people with vision disability? Do you have
accessibility for accessibility? Yeah. I think accessibility is somewhat outside of Sitecore's. Sitecore does. You're able to put validation on content before it goes live for some aspects of accessibility or any aspect that you want to customize on. But I think accessibility is kind of a separate thing outside of the platform itself.
Okay.
But yeah, it does have some features, like for example, alt tags, right?
Yeah.
It will require, like out of the box,
will
ask you for
with colors
alt tags. Yeah.
also.
Colors, that's more on the design side. That would be more kind of having to work with somebody that's
for the forms stuff. It does put in, like, say say the accessibility needs those extra labels for the form fields. When you drag the fields over, the new version of Forms does that for you. Whereas web forms for marketers, you had to do it yourself. But the new Forms one actually does.
Adding those tooltips, what they used to call tooltips, but field tips, where you actually put the text up and then your screen readers and all that. So typically the screen readers would read all that stuff.
Okay.
So out of the box, it does a few things, but colors, it's not going to be able to tell you that stuff.
Okay.
So that would be more engaging with someone that's myself, for example. I've done AODA implementation, so.
So if you allow me to ask you two more questions.
2 more questions?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So and in your slide you mentioned about unique views. What are unique views?
So unique views are basically the first time that they are. So a person can come back to a site or to a page or anything for multiple times. But how many of those were unique? So the first time they visited. So they can come back multiple times to a page or they can come back once. Am I correct? All the marketing people, who's it?
No, that's correct.
Help me out here. Yeah, so a unique view would be the first time versus multiple times visited.
Even though you do like different time, I mean different things.
Yeah.
It's the unique time that the browser.
Also, it's only based on time.
So just think about it like this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people on this side of the room, right? The first time the 11 people hit the site, that's 11 unique views, right? The next time they come back, it's still 11 unique views because all of them have already been there. But let's say 2 people come here from this. Now we have 13, right? 11 plus 2, yeah, 13, right? 13 unique views. But now we might have overall views, maybe 100, right? Because they could have come back multiple times, right? So it's really a unique visitor, a unique view. That's kind of how.
Okay.
Right. So if you think about an individual.
Yeah. Okay. So, but even though
Did I explain that right?
Yeah.
Even though
it be tracked by the device and the browser.
Oh, so it's based on that.
Yeah.
Because it can be like 2 people in the house
Coming
for the first time, but it's based on the API.
Which is no, it's based on the browser. If they're using the same browser on the same laptop, then you wouldn't be able necessarily to know that they're unique unless maybe they're logging in or you do some crazy.
Okay. If one person
opens their
opens
wife and they
3
clear their
browsers.
cookies. Sorry, if they're hiding from their wife and they clear their cookies, then that's also a unique view the next time the wife comes on.
Okay.
I just open up a new incognito session for every page I go to.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
That's also a unique view. So even if it's the same
You're spanning
person.
analytics. Thank you.
So and then
So it's you that's marking my analytics.
I have a question about the connector. So how many campaigns can you connect to a connector?
How many
campaigns can you connect to one connector?
to a connector?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you can put as many as you can. Okay.
Yeah. I would think. Yeah. That's.
Let's test it.
Yeah.
There's no.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Welcome. Anybody else?
I think that's it.
If that's it, then I'm done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so like I said before, we're all going to be open until 8:30. So yeah, feel free to stick around for a bit, have some food, and chat. Yeah, I'm just going to take really quick. I'm just going to take a photo.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so fast.
Wait,
Oh.
Alan, do you want me to take a photo of
Yeah, like
you?
that.
Yeah, Alan, you
Yes,
get over here.
Okay.
Come on, Alan.
Yeah.
And everybody
I got
leave us so that we
I like not doing work. That's cool.
Do you want me to take it on your phone?
Sure. That sounds great.
Fill up the spaces.
Alright.
Help the group out.
Yeah.
We have everyone.
That's right.
There you go. Oh, look at that. Really tall. Never done.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
This one.
Wow.
That's right. Juan and Nabila are like 6.5 feet tall, maybe 7.
Right. On the count of 3, everyone say Sitecore. 1,
Sitecore.
2, 3.
Sitecore.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
So many
Thanks everyone for coming.
All
right, everybody.
Have some snacks.
Your phone?
That work?
Sitecore is dangerous.
All right. Hey, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you.
That's great.
I'll send you. Maybe Nabil send you.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Thanks,
funny. I was watching
documentary on
Netflix about how they manipulate the campaigns in the US.
You gotta be on
And
Sitecore.
episode
Just
watches
watch
people. They use Sitecore. Yeah.
So I've been on the site, I've been changing it parameter to show you that like.
Awesome. I learned something today.